Hello, everybody. Welcome to our June business application NYC meetup event. We're joined today with members of both the NYC Business Applications user group and the NYC Power Platform user group. I would like to thank Danish for volunteering to give us a session on creating a React app for Dataverse, as well as the event organizing committee, Mihir Shah, Aaron Fishman, Arun Vinoth, and myself, Eric Levin. This is our 5th event for the NYC BizApps user group, and we have already people registered from the tri-state area as well as remote members from the worldwide community. So just during the presentation, if you can keep yourself muted, feel free to ask questions in the chat window or raising your hands in Teams. Aaron?
All right. Yes, thank you, Eric. And we just want to introduce, I would like to introduce Danish Naglekar. He's our presenter today. I'd like to give him a warm welcome. Danish is known as Power Maverick. He's a Microsoft Business Applications MVP, a Microsoft certified trainer, a full stack software engineer, a consultant, and an architect. Recently, Danish published his first book, Extending Microsoft Power Apps with Power Apps Component Framework, and also published the book Power Platform, and also publishes the Power Platform Dev Weekly Newsletter, to which I subscribe, and I highly recommend. If you are not subscribed to that, definitely put that on your list. It's worthwhile, and I want to thank you personally, Danish, for that excellent newsletter. He has also created various tools for the community, including PCF Builder, which is available for XRM Toolbox. And Danish also shares his knowledge with the community via his blog and his YouTube channel, which I'm sure we have links to in the slides. And Danish, we are very eager to hear what you have to say, so we will now turn it over to you. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to showcase what I have today. Let me add, okay, now I have sharing permissions. Cool. Okay, so hope everyone can see my screen. Okay, so first of all, before we start, can I get some hands raised or thumbs up or any kind of this particular mark over here, just to let me know how many of you are do you want me to go into deep technical details? And then accordingly, I can show my content. So 1, 2, 3. That's it. 3, 4. Okay. 5, 6. I think so. That's majority. 7. Okay. So then let me start with the agenda. I won't go through the presentation. I won't go through the slides, but then I'll dive directly into the demo. So what we are going to see, just to set up the stage, is we are going to create a React app. Then I'm going to show how to use Prettier. And then whenever you're creating a React app by itself cannot be deployed to Dataverse, because the way the React app, whenever you're creating a React app, you're actually creating a website, and Dataverse doesn't need a website to be deployed, right? We need to make some adjustments to the way the React app is created so that we can make it deployable to the Dataverse. So that's the third point that we're going to look at, which is the most important piece of the entire presentation. So that's the key piece, right? Then I'm going to just showcase how when you're creating the React app, how you create components, how do you manage components, things like that. Then go through some Fluent UI experience. And then ultimately, if time permits, we'll do a build, deploy, and then I'll also show you how to debug your React app while it's deployed to Dataverse. Okay, so yeah, I won't go through this. React is good, just use React. Okay, but why do we have to use React for HTML web resources? Well, there is a PCF option, but PCF options has its limitations. It needs to be binded to a field or to a data set. And that's what the limitation right now with the PCF control is. Until and unless it becomes unbounded, whenever we have unbounded PCF controls, we are stuck with HTML web resources. So they're not going to go away, right? So that's why we and whenever we build HTML web resources, we tend to use plain HTML5 plus CSS to look it more pretty. But the power of React is much better because now you get this kind of the component structuring that you get with React. You won't be able to get that with just HTML and CSS. You can use JavaScript, but again, you don't get that component structure that I'm going to show in today's demo when you're using just HTML. So yeah, let's dive into the demo. I'm gonna exit out of this. And so first thing first, how do you start the React app? So to start the React app, the command is pretty simple. It's called npx followed by create. React app. Okay, so npx create React app, then you give your React app. Now, whenever you're creating a React app, everything should be in lowercase. It doesn't allow you to have uppercases when you're creating the React app. So you can see that I've created a React app called My Awesome App. So everything is in lowercase. So this is just test. And then once you provide your test app, once you provide your name of the app, then you have to provide the template. Now, if I just run this query, it's going to create a React app, but it's going to provide me with a JavaScript template and not the TypeScript template. But I like TypeScript. It just gives you that compile time errors that makes me make less errors than figuring it out on the runtime that the errors are occurring, which is not a good experience. Then you have to go through all the scenarios, figure out where the error is. Compile time errors are good. Go for TypeScript just because it gives you that compile time error, right? And everything has types associated to it. So I like that template. So I'm going to use template and just type in TypeScript. That's it. Simple, right? Now this will take some time, right? It's going to take probably 2 minutes. So I'm not going to go through and then waste your time just looking at this process. So I already have the app created here. And this is my, I've named it as My Awesome App. And it's going to be awesome, right? So before we dive into this, let me show you how the app looks like. And I should have opened that page, which I didn't. So while that is opening, I'll come back to that page. So this is my app. As you can see, it has a lot of things in it. It has a lot of stuff in it, and we don't need any of this stuff. Node modules, forget it. We have to clean this up. We don't need all this stuff. We have to slim down the React app because we are not building a website. So most of the stuff we don't need. Like we don't need any of this from the public folder. The only thing that we would need from the public folder is the index.html, and that's about it. So we can get rid of everything else. So select everything, delete. Okay, same thing with the source. We might want to use CSS for some reason. Test, if you want to use test cases or unit test cases, you can keep test files. But if you're going to do test files, then I wouldn't recommend using the out-of-the-box testing just because it's not structured very well. Then you are better off deleting it first and then implementing the test cases as a different step, either using Mocha or any other testing platforms, frameworks. So I'm going to delete test. I don't want that. There are 2 CSS files, as you can see. Now everything is based out of app. Okay, so we don't need index.css. So I'm going to delete index.css. And I don't need any logo because I don't want to showcase a logo because I'm not creating a website, right? And then report web vitals. Again, this is pertaining to creating a website, and then setup test because we're not going to do tests. Right? So delete that as well. So now we have slimmed down version of our React app. Now, once you have the slimmed down version, you will get a lot of errors. So if you go to npm scripts here, if I do a build, I'll get tons of errors because there were some references in each of these files which we have deleted, and now it's going to throw me an error. So we don't want that, right? So we want to go in app.tsx file and then look for any references. So this was referencing logo.svg, which we deleted. So we're going to get rid of that. And then we don't need all this thing. So we're going to get rid of everything over here. Just see, yeah, this is all good. So we just have slimmed down version of my app.tsx file. And an index file has some references as well, like index.css, get rid of that, report vitals, and get rid of the report vitals here as well. So now it looks pretty neat, right? And then index.html, again, index.html. So whatever is in the public folder is what gets created. So what happens is you're writing your logic in here, and then that logic, when you build it, it gets compiled, and then that gets added with that index.html. So here you can see that there's a div id root, and if I go to index file, what it will do is it will compile the React component and then add it to that root element. That's what it does. So that root element comes from here. So you can probably customize this index.html to your liking, but because everything is going to be handled through source, we also need to slim down this version as well. So because we are not building a website, so meta tag doesn't matter, right? So get rid of all this. Get rid of title because title doesn't, or you can keep title. Sometimes title are referred when you're creating the HTML and uploading it in Dataverse. No script, you can keep it, and then remove all the comments. So that you created a slimmed down version. Now if I build it, I should get a success right now. Let's see. And if you have any questions, just put it in chat. I'm tracking the chat here as well. Okay, so you see, it was a success, compiled successfully. And now, once it compiles, you'll see that it created a build folder. And now if you go to the build folder, you'll see that it has this index.html. Okay, so we can deploy index.html as is in Dataverse. Fine, which is looking good, right? Then index.html is also associated with some CSS files because we are referring CSS files. And then we are going to write some logic, which will be in TypeScript, which will be compiled into JavaScript, right? So JavaScript is also going to be associated with your index.html along with CSS. Now, those two files also needs to be uploaded in Dataverse. But if you see, the CSS file has some weird naming convention. If I open this static folder, you see that we have two CSS files, whereas here we only have one. Again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 JavaScript files. What's happening, right? That's how React works. Because whenever you're creating this React app, you're actually building a website. So what happens is when this web developers, they would use React, they would just deploy this entire build folder to their www root directory, and that becomes their website, right? And they don't have to worry about references because index.html is doing relative path references. So they don't have to worry about all those things. They just copy that folder, put it in their www root folder, that becomes a website. But for us, we have to make sure, because we're going to deploy this separately in Dataverse, we're not going to deploy this as a web page, right? So we have to make sure that we only have one CSS file, one JS file, and then one index.html file, right? So we need those three files, and we don't need all these kind of things. And every time you build it, this is called hash values or chunk value. It keeps changing, and the reason why it keeps changing is so that there is no cache. So whenever a new website version is released, the previous JavaScript files and CSS files are normally cached. And what happens is if there's a logic change, then your cache version is being used and you don't see the changes on the website. So whenever the React component is getting built, it changes this chunk values, so that every time a new CSS and new JavaScript files are being referenced by the client. So you're not using the cache file if the new files exist, right? So that's how it maintains your websites, making sure that it doesn't break by any means. But for us, we don't have that caching problem because everything is in Dataverse, right? So for that, what I do is normally you would need the way. Okay, so let's go and look at the package.json. So package.json is using this React scripts. React script is, if you have worked with PCF, so PCF has their PCF scripts. Similarly, React has their React scripts. And what it does is internally it uses Webpacks. Even PCF uses Webpacks. But if you want to override Webpacks, then you have to go in the node modules, go in the React scripts, identify where the Webpacks are used, and then change it. But the problem with that is node modules are not on the source control. So if I'm working in a team, and if I do any changes on the node modules, that are not going to get checked in the source control. So let's say Arun comes in, and Arun is going to work on this code now, and he brings this code down to his local machine, and he's going to work on it. He's not going to get those Webpack changes because it was in the node modules, which is not in source control. So he has no idea what's going on, right? So to avoid that, what I like to do is I like to install something called, it's an NPM package called React App Rewired. So let's go and install that. Sorry. Okay. So React App Rewired. Now you can also see that in React App Rewired, I'm using this save dev. Now you can actually not see it properly. So let me paste it in Notepad and make it a little bigger. Okay. Okay, so you can see that what the command that I have is npm install, then the name of the app, which is called React App Rewired, and then I'm also using this attribute called savedev. Now, savedev is telling npm that I would only be using this package for development purposes because we don't have any use of this particular application on the client side. So client doesn't need it. It's only needed for development because so that we can override the Webpack configs. So that's what I'm going to do. Install this here. And you can see that in the dependencies, once it installs, we'll have a dev dependency showing up here. Okay, there you go, dev dependency. And there are two dependencies. There's this dependency, which is the client-side dependencies, and then you have your dev dependency, which is just for development purposes. Okay, so now once you have React App Rewired, you have to add some config files that are needed for the app to work. So I'm gonna bring that in here. Okay, so this is my config -overrides.js. That's the name of the file you have to provide. You cannot change the name of the file because that's how the React App Rewired works. And you'll have a lot of documentation on their npm site. And basically what you're doing is you're actually overriding the Webpacks. So to override the Webpacks, you start with the Webpack and you start with the function. And inside the function, you're saying if the environment is production, how do you want to override your Webpack configurations? So I'm saying, first of all, don't create runtime chunks. So this chunks that you see here, I'm saying don't create that. Then I'm like these are chunks, right? And I'm saying don't split the chunks. So if what React does is if the file is getting too big, it splits it up. The reason is because it's trying to improve the loading performance of the website. But for us, we just need one file. So we are saying don't split the don't split the chunks. Okay. Then we are saying what would our JavaScript file name be? Right now, it's giving this main dot some number alphanumeric thing and then chunk.js, right? So here we can actually provide your own name. So you can say this is going to be my awesome JavaScript, and I'm going to keep the chunk name because it's not going to generate chunks, so I can leave it as is. And then my CSS is going to be awesome CSS. Those are the two settings. Now you don't have to worry about this. I have this entire code repo on GitHub, so I'll share that link at the end of the session. But that's about it, right? So now let's go and delete this build folder first of all. Okay, and then second thing is you have to go in package.json, and now it's calling React script. Instead of doing React script, you say React app rewire. So instead of being calling React scripts, you're calling React app rewire. It is something that you don't want to do, right? You can read about eject, what eject does. So I don't like to keep it in my package.json just because if I by mistakenly if I run it, then I'm going to mess up all my React changes. So I'd like to remove it from my package.json all the time. So now I have this configured. Now let's go and build it again and then see what happens. Oh, by the way, in my config, I'm also changing the path from build to distribute, dist. So instead of having a build folder, now it will have a dist folder. So that's what you see here. Okay, and then it compiled successfully. Now let's go into dist folder, and then you'll see that I'm only having one JS file. This is the map file. You don't have to worry about the map file. You don't have to worry about the license file. And then in the CSS, you'll have CSS file. And again, there's a map file. You don't have to worry about it. This comes handy when you're debugging through Fiddler. That's where the map file comes into play. So don't delete it. Okay, and then you have this index file. So now, once we haven't developed anything in the React app, but this is just the tie-up, like how you set up your project. Once you have set up your project, now you have your main.css. And why did no? Or maybe I needed to give awesome here and awesome here as well. That's why it created main.css. That's fine. You can rerun it again. It will clean the distribute folder and re-add the files again. So we should be good. And there you go. Okay. So now we have awesome.css. Then we have awesome.js. Then we have index.html. These are the three files that you will be deploying to Dataverse. Everything would have references in it. But the key is when you go to index.html, you'll see that your CSS is referenced as a relative from where the index.html is deployed. Now, what happens is if you're deploying this in Dataverse, so I'll just show now my website should be up. Come on. So where did mine? Oh, wrong solution. It's called superhero. Yeah, there you go. Okay. So let's just sort this. And you can see that I have 1, 2, and 3 files over here. Now, my React so I've created this kind of folder structure in Dataverse, right? That's how normally we upload files. So I have this HTML here, but where the HTML is, my JavaScript is like it has JS / and then the JavaScript file, CSS / superhero styles. If I have to create this kind of relative structure, I have to make sure that my relative paths are correct. Now, in this case, my index file and my CSS file actually don't go like there should be a dot here so that it goes one level up where it goes to React and then goes to JS and then goes to the actual JS file. Same, it from here it goes to React, then goes to CSS and then goes to the actual file. So it should actually have a dot here, which it does not. But we don't want developers to know that when we are setting up the project. Otherwise, if I'm building this and if I don't add the dot and if I just deploy the files, it's gonna create issue, right? And then you'll be just wondering why it's creating issue. Danish said it's gonna work, but it's not working. So was he lying? No, I was not. So you go to package.json, and in package.json, the way you maintain your relative path is you add a home page here, and whatever you give in the home page it's going to add that to your relative path. So if I add a dot here, and if I compile this again, let's see what happens. It cleaned up all the files in the dist folder, and it's recreating those files again. So now if I go to index.file, you'll see that there exists that dot. Now you can create however you want to create your relative paths. So make sure that you're also adding home page in your package.json. Okay, so that's all how you configure your React app, right? Now let's see how your React app looks like when you deploy it. So as you can see, I've deployed these 3 files over here. And then you go to the superhero app, which is here. So what I've done, I've just created a dashboard and I've referenced my HTML file on the dashboard. That's it. Oh, sorry, I've not created a dashboard. Sorry, I've created a sitemap link and then I've pointed it to a web resource and I've selected that superhero HTML page as the web resource. Now everything in here, it is working via React. So I can say alignment. Okay, and then I can also see the details of the alignment and then see how it shows up that side panel. Everything is Fluent UI, and that's what I like about Fluent UI. You don't feel like you're using Fluent or you're using something custom because it looks like it's part of model-driven app, right? So you can see this this panel comes out here. If I click outside, it just gets hidden. Now, if your client wants something that is not using Fluent UI, you can also introduce something custom, like how I have done here is Superman. Let's search for Superman. So what I have done here is when you search for a few of the characters, I'm also showing the most recently searched superheroes over here. And this is a custom interface. As you can see that this is fully custom. It's not using any Fluent UI components, but I'm combining this component with my Fluent UI component with this, like, if I want to click this buttons, it still interacts pretty seamlessly. So you can use Fluent UI, you can use custom components, you can use third-party NPM packages and then combine all together and make some awesome, really awesome applications in Dataverse. So now coming back here, let's see. So yeah, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a component. OK, so the way I do my components is in the source. Source is your source, right? Public, you don't have to worry about it. You can probably minimize distribute folder. All our focus is going to be in the source folder. So in the source folder, you create a new folder called component. And inside component, you'll add your, let's say, my component.tsx file. Okay, so TSX file, TSX file is similar to your JSX file. It's just a supporting file that is available to you, which is the React file. It shows the React icon over here as well. And then in this component, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy a code. I'm lazy today. I'm just going to copy a code and save. Okay, now before I go and explain you the code, let's go and cover the part where I like to make my code prettier. I don't like, this kind of weird formatting. I like to have consistent formatting across. So for using consistent formatting, what I like to do is I always like to install a npm package called npm. It's called Prettier. What this package does is, again, command. Again, Prettier is supposed to get installed only as a dev dependency because client doesn't need it. They are not going to see the code. Prettier just formats your code, so you don't have to format it. And then the consistency is maintained across each developer. So like if I'm writing code and if I'm using spaces, like say I'm using spaces, right? But my colleague wants to use tabs, and now I'm using two space bars, whereas his tab is doing 4. Right, so there's inconsistency across how the code is getting formatted, and I don't like that. When I'm reviewing the code, or if my superior is reviewing the code, if there's a consistency, it's always good to understand the code, so it doesn't feel that it's me who has written, or if it's my colleague who has written the code, right? So this Prettier helps you in achieving that consistency across all your project. So once you have installed the Prettier package, it can run by itself, and there's a setting that you want to do. So preference setting, and you search save, and here you go. So this is the setting which is off by default. So what you want to do is you want to switch this on and then say format on save. So every time you save, any packages that you have installed like Prettier would try to format the code for you. Now it's telling me that the Prettier extension was installed. Do you want it to work, right? So I'm just going to say allow, but it's not going to format my code yet. Okay, it will do for you if you have not done another setting. So there's another setting which I like to do all the time. So if you go to Prettier, Prettier has a setting. Where is the setting? Require config. So this is the setting which is off by default again. If you turn this on, it means that Prettier would not format your code until and unless there is a config file available in your code. And that's just because I'm working on public repos as well. Sometimes I'm working on Microsoft repo, sometimes I'm working on some other XRM Toolbox tools repo or anything else, right? So sometimes they don't like formatting the way I format, the way Prettier works. And just to avoid that kind of things, I like to keep this as turned on. But that means every time I'm saving, it's not formatting my code. So it only works when you include a Prettier JSON, which is another config file. So in this Prettier and this again, you can see this file in the repo URL that I'm going to share at the end. So what it does is here you can actually say everyone. You will have every file will have 4 spaces of tab width. Okay, and then you just put it in here and save it. And now if I come here and if I do a save, voila, my code gets formatted just on save. That's it, right? I don't have to do anything. It does everything for me. Lazy, right? So that's it. That's my component, right? Now this component whenever you add these components, and this is the main thing about React, is you can create as many components as you want. And now once you're ready, you can use those components over here, and using it is also simple to import. Right? And then you say dot forward, and then you say components / and then it just provides you with that component here. And then now if you go in my components, this is the export. My component is the export. So I copy that name and I go back to my app.tsx and then add it over here. Now, there are two things how you can export your components. You can either do default export or you can just do an export. So you can do an export over here. I'm using a function component, so it has to be default export here. But whenever you're doing a default export, you would be wondering why sometimes it needs. Wait. Yes. And okay. Yeah. Why is it doing sometimes this star as my component, and why sometimes it needs brackets? And inside the bracket, you will have something written over here. That's because if you are exporting something default, then default export should be written with a star as my component. And if you're not doing a default export, then you'll have those curly braces. Now, once you have this here, you can just reference it like this. And let's see what's the error. Okay, so it tells me that my component does not have a construct or a call signature. Go to okay, so yeah, my component that I have is asking for a property, and one of the property text is a required property. Now, how you define required and optional is if I put a question mark here, it becomes optional. If I don't put a question mark here, it becomes required. So now I'm stating that this is a required attribute. So I have to specify that here. Yes, something is wrong. Let me see what's wrong. Yeah. Still shows does not have a constructor or a call signature. This okay, so it did not need star over there. So yeah, that's how I've used my component. Now I can run this and let's see how it turns out. What have we given in the test? DDDF something, and this is my component. Now I'm not pasting it here, but I can actually paste what I want here. Oh, props dot text. And now I should see it over here as well. And we have 15 minutes left. Are there any questions before I? Any questions from anyone?
Hi, Danish. This is Aaron. Are you using this at any clients? Like, this is a great demo of what's possible. Have you actually been using this anywhere? And if so, can you just describe what the solution is?
Yeah, this entire process came out of a client. So we actually implemented this at a client, and that's how I was like, Andrew Butenko at some point, he also noted something similar, but he was doing changes in the node modules, and I was like, yeah, node modules. Then how do we make sure that my colleagues also get the same thing? It will get lost. So we had to figure out a way, and then make a robust process, and that's how this came out. So it actually came out from one client, and then we implemented a similar structure on the other clients. So as of now, we have used it 2 clients.
Cool. And just high level, I don't want any specifics, but what are the applications actually doing? I assume not superheroes.
Well, yeah, not superheroes, definitely, but mostly it was. So it was not the Dataverse data that we wanted to showcase. At one client, there was a Dataverse data that we want to showcase, but we actually went with Canvas app initially, but Canvas app performance was not that great. And we ran into issues where we wanted to show activity parties, and we ran into issues with that with Canvas app. So, so then we said, okay, Fetch does a better job than what Canvas app is providing. So, but then how do we go PCF route, or do we go that? So that was the kind of research that we did. And then mostly it was the activity party that made us go this route, because activity party, as you know, is very complicated data structure by itself.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
So sorry, Danish. What was the decision to go with React Web Resources versus PCF?
Well, as I said, like this was not bound to any field, or it was not a data set data that they wanted. Otherwise, our choice would have been PCF. But this was something that was gonna go on the, like how I have this superhero app. It's not tied to a data specifically. It's just on the sitemap. Like you have your HTML web resources just on a sitemap. It's not tied to anything, right? It's not bound to anything. Whereas PCF, you need to bind it to something, right? As of today. So that's why we went with, like, we needed HTML web resources for sure, but HTML5 and using CSS was not giving us the ability, because we are going to work on a lot of data points. A lot of data manipulation needs to happen before we can even show it on the screen. HTML works great with JavaScript. It works great if you have less of a scripting and more of a UI changes that you need to play with, then that works great. You should then stick to HTML5 and CSS. But when you have a lot of data that you want to play with and then manipulate the data before it can be showcased in a nice way, and also use Fluent UI so that your controls are looking in place and not out of place. So those were the kind of decisions that we had to go through before we can say, okay, we want to go with React app and use HTML web resources.
Okay, you answered my next question already with Fluent UI. So
yeah, Fluent UI was a lifesaver, because if we had to create the same look and feel, because client was like specific, we wanted something custom, but we also want to look like it's part of the model-driven app. If we didn't had Fluent UI, then recreating those components would have been very, very hard to do. So it actually saved our asses, I would say.
Could you put a Blazor app in here that would be in the compiled .NET or something like that, WebAssembly, and it'd be a lot faster. I mean, you could play video games or whatever you want in this situation.
Yeah, I have not played with Blazor myself, but I believe Blazor can get deployed to Azure. So you can certainly deploy Blazor app on Azure, and Azure gives you a web URL. But the only thing is you're not working with the context of the data. Whereas here you can use XML context. So yeah, that's the only thing, right?
Yeah, I think you'd be stuck in a sandbox you couldn't get out of.
Right. Yeah. Whereas when you're creating this HTML web resources, you can use xrm.page. and then use the available context to do the to pull the data or to do anything. Like even if I click on certain things, I have not done that in this particular demo, but majority of the clients would ask you that now you're showing the contact information. Okay, great. What if I click on contact? That takes you to the contact form, right? You can do all that using xrm.page inside of the app.
Gotcha. Cool.
Any other questions? Guess not. So quick thing, how you so once you have deployed this, how you debug this, right? Because debugging is also one of the things that you should know how to do that. So to debug it, you have to start Fiddler, and there is go. And then in the Fiddler, you go to Composer, not Composer, sorry, autoresponder. And in the autoresponder, you just have to provide this particular regex. It's a pretty simple regex. You just say web resources, PWM, React, and then you provide that JS path, right? That exact JS path after the web resources that's available in here, right? So PWM underscore, sorry, this one, React /JS / your superhero script.js. Exact path is provided over here. And it's a pretty simple regex, not like complicated regex that we have done for PCF. And then just point it to your local distribute. Now, this is the key point, right? You're always pointing to your distribute folder because that's where your JS file resides. And that's where I'm pointing it over here. Once you have done that, then only thing that you want to do is keep this on and then put a debugger in your app and then just debug it. That's it. You can even debug CSS if you want to. And I keep this on all the time because this also helps you deploy it once, but then because you're using xrm.page and xrm.page doesn't work locally. So you want to test all those changes using your Fiddler. So you do your changes locally, but before you create your pull request or you push that code to source control, you test it out, right? Before even deploying it, without even deploying it to Dataverse. This saves tons of time. So I just keep this on, go in here and do my testing and then see if it is working or not. Because this is all, what this does is this always pulls the script from your local file. The only thing that you have to keep in mind is whenever you do changes in your code, always don't forget to build it. You have to build it so that your distribute folder gets the latest JavaScript and latest CSS files, and that way your Fiddler can pick up the latest changes from your local drive. And yeah, that's it. So I'm gonna stop presenting and then let's go over a few more questions about any questions about debugging or anything else. Okay, well, I have nothing. Okay, I'm gonna just share my contact information if you don't have it already, but I believe the team here is already sharing it via the PowerPoint. But yeah, if you don't have the contact information, you can connect me via on Twitter, on LinkedIn, GitHub. My YouTube channel is search for Power Maverick, and my website is powermaverick.dev.
Very nice.
Yeah, this is great, Danish.
Yeah, this is really eye-opening.
Yeah.
Let me just take over for a second.
Definitely a Maverick maneuver there.
Okay, be here. You're on.
All right. So thank you, everyone, for staying on and listening to this. I hope it was very eye-opening and maverick. Thank you, Danish, for everything here. One slide here. This is about Microsoft Inspire, July 14 to 15, digital event online. So please do register. It's free. I think you'll get a lot of information, a lot of talks on this session from Microsoft. Next slide, please. So this is our Microsoft Business Application NYC user group. This is where we are going to eventually move. We have started moving already. So in addition to the 2 meetup groups that we are hosting, we will also have this information of all the future events and on this platform, on the Power Platform user group. So I would request everybody, if you're not a member, please become member of this Microsoft Business Application NYC user group. And also do tell your friends, colleagues, anybody who's interested to join. So we'll continue to grow this, and we want to promote talent within the community and also bring in great speakers like Danish today to enlighten all of us. So please do join this user group.
And we'll make sure to have the Teams event in here next time.
Yeah, yeah. So we will also have the Teams event link on here. So we apologize. We didn't really think we should have put it up here as soon as we create the link. We will do that next time onwards. And finally, this is our next event. So this is another great event we are planning for on July 14th at the same time, 7 p.m. The speaker is Reza Torani. He's also a BizApps MVP, MCT, and Power Platform Tech Lead. The topic will be Power Platform integration. So this will be a great topic for anybody. I know every project that I have been to, integration has been the most challenging, or one of the most challenging things that we ever encounter. So I personally, I'm looking forward to this, and I hope everybody would join this event, which is on July 14th. We will start marketing this very soon, so you will be able to register. You can register on the Business Applications user group or the Power Platform user group meetup events, as well as the Microsoft NYC user group that we showed earlier. So that's all from now. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Danish. Looking forward to your, joining us again for other future event. Thanks a lot. Take care, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Just one thing here. So we will have, probably within the next few days, we'll be posting the video of this event, so that if anybody who wasn't able to join at the beginning or miss parts of it will be able to see the video.
Yes, that is important. Yep.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Danish.
Thank you, Danish. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Take care.